But otherwise, they're not, that's going to be hard for them to hear.
What are you people? On dope? What are you people? On dope?
Yeah.
That's
Just go ahead and play your sound.
okay.
And I'll tell Chris because we're
That
going to
it's
think of
just
another solution.
okay because it'll distort it a little bit. I'll do it.
Yeah, it'll be a little distorted.
Well, when they're not talking, it won't. I'll be able to mess with the sound a little bit too.
And it won't be as loud.
It won't be as loud because they won't be
Still
as
might
loud.
be a little too loud for the system, but that's
Okay. All right. We can figure that one out,
well,
right?
I'll let Chris know. So it's
Okay.
not only the microphone, it's the guys as well.
Okay.
And do you have it turned up all the way on your computer?
Yeah.
Lower it a little bit.
Okay.
See how it comes on. I don't want to take up too much of the cost.
That's okay. They don't mind. Okay, this one.
I am Frau Blucher.
Okay.
All right. Luck.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi guys, it's 9:30. Yay! Uh-oh, wait a minute. We're not projecting. What's happening? Like you've done here, yes. Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from last week? Comments? Concerns? Okay. We're going to start today and try to do our little top hat guy. See if I can make it work today. So we'll go back to the one we did last week, whatever day that was, Thursday. And for those of you who sent in answers, you can try again, see what happens. I don't know if it lets you. Okay, so there we go. Now we have it set up. Oh, a little bit. So now it tells you, right, this is the number that you text to. This is the stupid 4-digit key code. And so you type in 6474 and either A, B, or C for your answer. So for those of you who are texting and not smartphoning or computering or iPadding, this is not good right here, it turns out. Okay, so the question was, if anybody's on a smart, does it let you send it again? If you sent it last week, can you send another answer? Yes? Okay, good. Well, I mean, darn, then you could get more points, but. All right, I'm going to attempt our mood lighting. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Ooh, that would be really mood lighting. Okay. Okay, so if you have not registered for the top hat, and that means you did not pay your $20, right, and you're texting in, the system will take your answers, but it won't show up in the grade book, okay? When you do go ahead and register and put in this whatever phone you're using and all of that stuff and pay the $20, you can request from IT through Top Hat to pull the answers you've already sent. Okay, so if you're sending answers now and you're not yet registered, you can still get credit for those, as long as you register, within the next couple weeks. Okay, so if you haven't registered, still send in answers because they can pull those, right? Because they'll be linked to the phone number. Sorry, went to sleep, just like you guys will. No. These are the jokes, people. Work with me. Okay, so did everybody's text go that they tried to go? Okay, if you're having signal problems, walk outside, see if it goes through. So then I'd say disable, theoretically, and then I could show you the answer, right? Yay, and then I could look at the report and say, yay, almost everybody got the right answer, right? Because you could do an experiment to figure out if people, right, a population, we could say you guys, people in this room, like Heinz ketchup better than Hunt's ketchup. We could do a blind taste test, right? Everybody gets a French fry and dips it, and then cleanse your palate, and then dip again, and then fill out your survey, okay? We could disprove this if more than half of you like Hunt's better, right? We would disprove this hypothesis. If more of you liked Heinz better, we would support this hypothesis, okay? So it's a statement that's testable and falsifiable, right? Why do birds fly south is a question. That's not a prediction about anything. Birds fly south because it's warmer there would be more of a hypothesis. It would be hard to test because, how do you know if birds like it warm or not? Whatever. There's more sex to be had in the south. Would be easier to test because then you can watch the birds up here, how much sex do they have, and then you get to go down south and see how much sex they're having, and then fill out your form, okay? Your parents would be so proud. And then the last one, Stonehenge being built by magic, is neither testable nor falsifiable, right? We can't test magic. If magic exists, it's not testable. Okay, it is a sentence, though, or a statement. All right, people. What else? Okay, did what? What happened to chapter 2? Aha! Okay, first I got to remember what the hell we got through. Were we right here? Did we get, yeah, look at that. We're talking about the rent-its. Everybody's sleeping. Okay. Oh, I forgot I'm being lecture captured. I got to be. Okay, remember, we're going to review what a population is. A group of organisms of the same species in a given area. Okay? Generally, when we're talking about a population, the given area is something relatively small and defined, right? Someplace where these guys in this population could be interbreeding with each other, right? Because the definition of a population is the same species in a given area that are having sex with each other and pretty much not having sex with others of their species in other populations. So you could say a population is all of the blackbirds in North America, but all of those are not really having sex with each other unless they really get around, okay? You'd be a better population, a more defined scientific population would be all the blackbirds at CSUN, right, or all the squirrels on CSUN campus. Because these guys are not having sex with the ones that are in Santa Monica Mountains. Okay, there's not enough Cheetos out there. They don't go over there. Muffins and Cheetos are what they like. Okay, so when you're thinking about a population, you have to think about they have to be the same species, has to be in a given area that makes sense for mating to happen within that. Okay, are we digging a population? Yeah, you're with me? Are we ready to top hat that population? I think we are. So let's do that now that I figured out how to do it. Okay. So here we are. We're all ready. Which of these most accurately describes a single population? Right? Same species, given area, having sex with each other. How's your hints? Yes?
I still have the same question. Like, how do you...
I don't know, try to go forward. No? So, oh, there you go. Okay. Yes. You got it? Yeah, some of the smartphones were having a delay. Does everybody have the correct question up now? All right. Which of these most accurately describes a single population? A, 2 rabbits in a field. B, all the seagulls in North America. C, all the oak trees in a park. D, all the indoor house cats in Montana. E, all the people in your biology class. Remember, they all have to be having sex with each other to be a scientific single population. Okay? Not potentially, they actually have to be doing it. So I don't know, maybe I have a really good class this semester. We'll find out. All right. Is everybody texting? Is everybody in? Okay. So when it says 100% in, that means of those registered. So I know lots of you aren't registered yet. Oh. So exciting. So you could just be texting your friends, and I'll think, they're so diligently doing their work. Look at those people participating in class. Oh, crap. All right. Fire away, people. We got to move on. Okay, so I'm going to disable, which, as it turns out, doesn't usually disable. I don't know. Okay, let's do the report first. Oh, my God. So here's I do like answer E. That does kind of make me happy, right? It's going to be a good semester. Okay. So indoor house cats in Montana, probably not, because if they're indoor, they can't have sex with each other. So, right, they are a single species and they are in a given area. But if they're indoor, how are they going to get to the house next door to have sex with them? Right, so the scientific population definition, they have to be interbreeding. Okay. All the oak trees in a park, right, one species in a given area, and trees just have sex with whoever happens to be nearby. Right? Because they make their pollen and they spew it all over. They have sex with themselves also, right? Most plants have both. Remember we talked about female and male parts, right? So the pollen is the sperm, right? So if you're allergic to pollen, it's because you got sperm jammed up your nose, making you sneezy. It's giving me a little asthma. Been inhaling too much sperm, plant sperm, okay? So that fits all the characteristics, right? It's a single species in a given area having sex like crazy with each other. Okay. All the seagulls in North America, yeah, except that if you think about what the seagulls in California, are they actively having sex with seagulls in the Atlantic? Probably not on an everyday basis. So, yeah, we could define that as a population because seagulls can get around, but a better population, if it's choose the best answer, would still be the oak trees, right? Because they're going to sleep, people. And then 2 rabbits in a field. Okay, I should have probably been a little more specific, right? A population has to be more than one couple. Right? And the 2 rabbits weren't defined as both male or both female or a male and a female. Okay, so if you're thinking of a population, at least scientifically, it has to be enough members so that sex is happening and, right, they're not all, so 2 is really not enough to be a population. Okay, as far as in a scientific sense. Okay, so, so out of all these, this was your best answer. So on the exam, I'll be less picky. I was trying to make a point of all the nitty-gritty crap, you know, for actually being a single population so that you guys can remember that. So the defined area has to be not enormous, right? Because you want to make sure active sex is happening. Okay? And it's got to be a big enough number, 10 or 20, so that there's, you know, mating happening and it's functioning as a population in the environment. Right? If there's 2 rabbits in one field, those guys are either going to be dead, right? Or they're going to be so inbred if their babies survive, and then it's going to be incest and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? Does that make sense? Are you good with the population? Yes, sir.
What is the distinctive difference between that one and the other ones? I'm confused.
The oak trees?
Yeah.
So in a park, right, is not enormous, right? So all of the trees in that given area, so say it's, you know, Northridge Park, or, you know, some standard, right? All of those are within distance of each other to blow their pollen on them, right? So if you're on one end of the park and a tree on the other end, the wind blows and the pollen could potentially get to the far end, go to the middle, right? All over the place. They can all exchange gametes, okay? And if it's an oak tree, we're not counting the ash trees, we're not counting the pepper trees, we're not talking about, you know, the evergreen trees, we're just talking about those oak trees in that park. So a single species in a defined area that is having sex with each other, right? Because the house cats can't have sex with each other unless you had, unless you're the crazy cat lady, right? So I could have said the crazy cat lady in Montana has 30 cats in her house of all sexes, right? They're going at it like rabbits, and they're all, you know, producing kittens. Her population is growing. That would be a single species in a given area where sex is happening altogether. That would be a population, right? But if we're talking about all the house cats in Montana, the indoor ones, right? Your neighbor down the street has 2 cats, you have 2 cats, somebody else has 2 cats, a cat. None of those are having sex with each other. So that's not a scientific population.
What about all the people?
All the people would be a population if you guys are all having sex with each other. So if that's true, I want to hear about it. No. Right? Are you having sex with all these people? No. Okay, yeah. Right, so it potentially could be, but as far as being a specific scientific population, we wouldn't call us that unless we were doing that. That makes sense?
Are you saying that the trees are growing in a park because they're mating with each other? Is that
they're a population because they're all growing in the same area and they're all mating with each other. And they're not, so these oak trees can't mate with the ash trees. Okay, their pollen doesn't fit in the right pocket. Yeah. Right. So we're not making hybrid, right? Hybrids generally don't happen. So the oak trees can only have sex with each other. And they're in this little defined area. That make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you. Is that good? You guys are good? Population? Given areas? Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, so the seagulls, again, if you were talking about all the seagulls in the world and we said the North American seagulls versus the African seagulls, but if you think about the difference in climate between the East Coast and the West Coast, a better population would be the Southern California seagulls or the West Coast seagulls versus the East Coast seagulls, because they're not actively having sex with each other within a season, right? A few might make the 5,000-mile journey to go have sex with the other population, but they're not really intermixing their DNA on a regular basis. So it has to be intermixing DNA on a regular basis to be considered this scientific population. That make sense? You guys are good? Yeah, so someplace where you could imagine they can all get together and have sex. Now, if it's an animal that's relatively, like birds can get around, right? So you could even say the Midwest, if there's, you know, Canadian geese in the Midwest, they're all flying around having sex with each other, right? But if you're talking about like a salamander, right, whose home range might be 20 feet, right, that guy's not going to go walk 70 miles to have sex with another salamander, right? So that guy's population area would have to be defined much smaller, right? Because you want to make sure all those in that pond, those guys have ample opportunity to have sex with each other. But a pond 7 miles away is another population. Whereas if you're talking about ducks, both of those ponds could be the same population because, you know, a 7-mile flight for a duck is no big deal. But a little salamander would never walk that far unless he was really desperate. They just don't like me in this pond. I'm out of here. Okay. Oh, Lord, did I lose my... What the hell? What am I doing? Oh, it's back here. Okay. So all right, so that's where we left off, right? Yeah, we're all back here? Okay. So the definition of evolution is a change in the characteristics of organisms in a population over many generations. Okay. It could be called a change in traits, right? Something that those organisms encompass. It could be their coloring. It could be their ability to run faster. It could be their musculature. It could be their metabolism, right? It could be feathered feet. Any trait in a population. So that means evolution happens in populations, right? Which is, a population is a single species in a given area having sex. Because if a single population is having sex with each other, let's say the West Coast seagulls, right, over time, many, many generations, even thousands of generations, their traits, something about them could change enough so that they no longer recognize the East Coast seagulls as a seagull, as their species. So then they won't have sex with them. Right? The definition of a species is organisms that have sex with each other have live offspring that can then also have offspring. Okay, we'll get to that in the next section, right? But that's what a species is. Okay? So evolution happens to populations, not necessarily an entire species. Right? Evolution could happen to the seagulls on the West Coast and not on the East Coast. Global warming changes our environment much more drastically than the East Coast in 100 years. I don't know, I'm making it up. Okay? Those that have variations that allow them to adapt to this new environment survive to reproduce. Any of the seagulls that suck at surviving in this new environment die. They don't pass their DNA on. Okay? 100 years later, those seagulls have changed and are no longer that same species. Evolution happened to that population, not the entire species. Okay? It could happen to an entire species if that, right? There's lots of islands out there in the Galapagos, Indonesia, where the species only exists in that one little island. So then its population is the same as its species, because that's the only place it exists. So evolution can happen on that island to that population. It just happens to be the only population of that species on the planet. Right? But there are lots of organisms that live in lots of places whose environments are totally different and over time can change. Right? The ones on the East Coast don't necessarily change the same as the ones on the West Coast, because the East Coast guys are only having sex with each other and sharing DNA. The West Coast only having sex with each other and sharing DNA. If all the losers die off on the West Coast, right? That will change what that population looks like or acts like as time goes by. What if the East Coast gets even more food because of global warming and the seagulls have less competition and everybody survives to reproduce? Even the losers, right? Those guys aren't going to change. They're just having sex and having a great old time. Okay? So the entire species might not change over time, but a population does. Okay? The definition of evolution is a change in trait frequencies, a change in characteristics, a change in genes, genetics of a population over time. Has to be over time. Okay? An adaptation is what one individual in that population has. I'm better at surviving without water longer. When there's a drought, I will be the one that survives to reproduce. My kids are more likely to be better at conserving water because I was, and my DNA is what controls your ability to conserve water. So my offspring will be able to survive better. They get to have more sex and more kids and so on and so on and so on. If you're not good at conserving water, you dehydrate and die. You can't have sex if you're dead. You can't pass your DNA on to live offspring if you're dead, right? They can still have sex. Oh, and that was the question about, yes, in the animal kingdom there is necrophilia. So I went and talked to my ecology and evolution pals, and apparently the cane toad, which was introduced, I think in Australia to take care of some pest, and now it's even a bigger pest because it's like this voracious. Apparently, cane toads will try to have sex with road-killed cane toads. Like even if they're like flat Stanley pancakes splattered on the pavement, yeah, they're still going at it. Trying to get some action. So, yes. It's not just people. All right, so we're going to go over and over and over this whole evolution happens in populations. Okay, not species, not individuals. Right? An individual is born with all the traits it's going to have. Right? You're born with the DNA you've got. You got 23 chromosomes from your mom and 23 from your dad, and that's all you get. Okay? Now, people, because we can think, we have this frontal cortex, and we can say, hey, if I need to run faster, I could work out and get better at running, right? Cheetahs don't, you either run fast or you don't, right? The cheetahs, when they're little kittens, play and run, and that's their working out. But there's no conscious, ooh, I need to play some more because I need to get a little buffer because, you know, that antelope looks really tasty, and if I just practice a little more, I'll be able to catch it. They don't, there's no thinking, right? We are the only species on the planet that can think like that, at least so we think. Right? So the hypothesis goes right now. Okay? So they get what they get. Right? You're either good at something or not. Right? We can hone our skills to be better in this and that. But if you really have a limited ability to tolerate heat or cold, that's what you get. You can't make yourself be better at that unless you say, I need to go get a big fur coat to keep me warmer, right? So then it doesn't matter if we aren't good at regulating our temperature in the cold, right? But animals need to be able to build a nice warm den to stay warm, right? So they get what they get. They can't decide to be better at something. They're either, they got it in their DNA and they're doing it, or they're not. Right? So there's no individual evolution. Individuals don't evolve. You get what you get. You have that adaptation or you don't. You live or you die based on your DNA, essentially out in the wild. And now that doesn't mean animals can't learn, but if the mom's a good mom and teaches all the kits, whatever, how to hunt and how to hide and how to be good predators or vice versa, be good prey, then they have a selective advantage. But it's that mom animal's DNA that's telling her to be a good mom, right? She didn't go to a support group. She didn't read a bunch of parenting BS books, right? They're either good at it or they're not. So an individual doesn't evolve. They can't evolve over time to be better at conserving water. You are or you're not. Over time, the population can get better at conserving water, right? Because the guy, I'm a super great at conserving water, but it doesn't really matter. I just happen to be. And so I'm having sex with the guy who has to drink all the time. Can't conserve water for shit. Okay? It doesn't matter right now because we have shitloads of water. If a drought hits and I'm still having sex with the guy because he's still hanging in there, he's not dead yet, right? My offspring don't have necessarily my selective advantage. They have my half of the DNA that's good at conserving water, but then the other half is all shitty, and so then they're mediocre, right? But if those guys that really stink at conserving water suddenly die, I'm like, hey, now who do I get to have sex with? Somebody else who's survived. That guy is good at conserving water. Now we got DNA good at conserving water from mom, DNA good at conserving water from dad. Offspring are much better at conserving water. They survive to reproduce. With others, blah, blah, 100 years later, you know, you have a desert tortoise that can go for months without water. 1,000 years, right, from some regular old random turtle to something that, you know, barely needs to drink at all. Can reabsorb almost all of their urine out of their bladder, right? As it turns out, as people, once you put urine into your bladder, it doesn't matter if you're dehydrating and about to die, you can't absorb it back into your bloodstream, right? You're done. You just got to go. But desert organisms that evolved in the desert, lots of them can absorb that back from their bladder as liquid. Absorb the water out, not the salts and all the urea, right? Okay. Over time in the population, each individual is either got it or not. You're either going to live or you're going to die, right? You're either going to pass on the trait or not, okay? And it doesn't have to be the entire species, because what if the drought was only in California, not New Mexico and Arizona? Those tortoises didn't need to. All of them are surviving. They still have lots of water. Just the ones in California. So now they've evolved over time, this population, to be different than what the ones in some other area. Okay? Evolution happens to populations over time. And there has to be some change, right? Right? If the species or the population doesn't change and they're exactly the same, well, there's no evolution because they didn't change. Okay? Right? It was over time and it's still a population, but if it's exactly the same as it was 1,000 years ago, then that's not evolution. All right, I'm sweating now. Speaking of regulating your temperature. Okay. So natural selection is one of the mechanisms that drives evolution. It's one of the main ones. It's the one we think of, survival of the fittest, reproductive success, right? If you're good at surviving and reproducing in an environment, your children will be good at surviving and reproducing, and so on, until there's some change in the environment, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So natural selection doesn't really pick out the best at anything. The ones who are good enough to survive and reproduce get to do so because they're not dead. Okay? So natural selection is not driving a population towards perfection. It's the minimum possible requirements to survive. Because if it's not good, you die. Right? There's no magical being picking out, ooh, this is a good, we like blue, so let's pick that to survive. Right? If something is blue and that gives it a survival advantage, it survives and reproduces. If that blue pigment makes it stick out and predators can see it better, it's going to get munched, and it's going to likely disappear from that population because that's going to be food first. And you can't have offspring if you're dead, right? You can't pass on your traits if you're dead. So natural selection is, right, like artificial selection is when we pick the traits we want, people, right, get feathery feet or a Chihuahua or a Great Dane or whatever traits we want in whatever animals, whatever domesticated animals we have, right? Cows, beef cattle, we want to have big muscles. Dairy cattle, we want to have big udders. You guys thought I was going to say boobies. Yeah. Yeah, so his question is about human beings. That's a great question. Do human beings still fall under natural selection? Right? We can make a lot more choices because we have the ability to reason. So are we outsmarting natural selection? I don't know. That's a good question. So for example, if somebody has migraine headaches, me, right, that are incapacitating, right? If you get one, you lay down in a fetal position and you throw up, okay? Now imagine we're cave people, okay? So I got the nice fur, okay? We are social beings as hominids, as humans, even 10,000 years ago. So we did have the ability to take care of each other, which is also something that's rare in the natural world, right? If there's a runt in a litter, it's generally ignored by the mom because it's going to die, and if that individual expends energy on a runt or an offspring that is born with something wrong with it, it's likely all of her offspring will die. So they ignore it for the good of the rest of the offspring, right? And in the natural world, in lots of cases, one of your litter survives to adulthood. So you can't expend any extra time on the ones that may have issues. Okay? But people don't do that. People take care of individuals who have disabilities or things wrong or so forth. But let's say, I'm out there and we're hunting the woolly mammoth and I'm struck by a migraine and I have to fall down and I have to lay there and then then here comes a saber-toothed tiger. If somebody picks me up and runs, we're both going to die. So everybody runs and I'm dead. Okay? That trait for getting migraines dies with me if I died before reproductive age. Okay? Or think about really poor eyesight. As a child with really, really poor eyesight, like you can't see anything and you needed glasses when you were 3 years old, much less likely to survive to adulthood as a cave person than now. Now we just get glasses and we're fine, right? So then you get to pass down your bad eyesight to your kids. Right? It's not a big deal now. You just get glasses. Then you fell off the cliff and are dead, right? You're out playing in the field. Oh, I'm dead. Okay, so we can get, right? We lost hair when we moved from the apes to the hominids, and then we moved places that were cold. We're like, oh, that was a bad idea to lose our fur coat. So we just got somebody else's. So yes and no, and depending on the environment, right? Depending on the environment. But much less affected by natural selection than every other organism on this planet, right? Because we can do things to get around it. Yeah?
The initial trait, like the migraine thing, is that just like a genetic mutation?
That's a great question. And lots of things we don't know, but it's likely to be because things like that tend to run in families. And so you can use genetics of your family tree to figure out, is this something that is just me, or was it something that my parents passed on to me? So as it turns out in my family, most of the women on one side of our family get migraine headaches. Right? My yeah. So Right, bad eyesight, sometimes, yeah, it's just something that happened, right? You're born with a mutation or something. Everybody else in your family has great eyesight, but that mutation that you have, then you are able to pass on to the next. And it could be a mutation that's something beneficial, right? Super good eyesight, or the ability to develop bigger muscles, or run faster, or, you know, in some cases, a different pigment color in your fur if you're an animal, which may give you some sort of hiding advantage or so forth. So this is what we've been talking about, right? There's no one great set of traits. It's all dependent on the environment. That was our example of metabolism. Having a really high metabolism is great if you live someplace with tons of fatty foods that are really yummy. But having a really high metabolism is not good if you live someplace that has very little food with very little nutritious value to it. Okay, so it's about your environment. It's not necessarily about the traits. So a population with a variety of traits is most likely to survive in the long run under environmental change. Because it's likely that some individuals are better at living in that new environment. If the environment doesn't change, it doesn't matter. Right? It's only if there's some sort of environmental change. Or that population decides to move someplace else. Right? It's getting way too crowded here. We're going to go on a little trek over this hillside. Oh, look, now we're in a swampy area. Right? Different traits will be important there than on the dry side of the hill. Right? If you're talking about little bugs or, you know, whatever. Okay. Survival of the fittest, again, reproductive fitness. Darwinian fitness is the ability to survive and reproduce. Have viable offspring, living offspring, that can also have offspring. And again, your DNA is your genetic information, right? It's what codes for everything that you see. Okay. Your metabolism, your skin color, your hair color, a lot of your personality, it's pretty hardwired, right? There's the argument between nature and nurture. Is it what you've learned, or is it what you're born with that creates your personality? Anybody's worked with kids or babies, they pop out the way they do. Right? Yeah, they can learn stuff. Yeah, you can modify temperament. But man, some of them, whew, right? You get what you get. There's not a lot of modifying. You can make kids brattier. That's easy by how you treat them. It's really hard to make them less bratty if they popped out pretty bratty. Right? Very high strung. Right? There's all the personality types. You can go online and take all those personality. Are you a type A? Are you type B? You know, are you this personality? Are you that? Are you anal retentive? Are you relaxed? All of that kind of stuff. Right? You can see it in very, very young babies. If the baby's 1-2 days old and they're already a giant pain in the ass, you're in trouble. Right? An infant who's bored when they're 6 weeks old is going to be bored and have that need for entertainment their entire life, right? Some kids, they just frickin' sit in the goddamn stroller for hours. Are you kidding me? Neither one of my children would sit in a stroller for 5 seconds. The only way my son would sit in a stroller is if you were running with it over something really bumpy. Shaken baby syndrome, right? I see kids they're just hanging out. You either got that one or you don't, right? You could strap that kid in there. They're going to cry it out. Yeah, they're going to cry it out, all right. It's going to be hours and hours and hours, and that child will never learn how to sit in a stroller. Okay? Some can. Personalities, A lot of stuff's hardwired by DNA. A lot of stuff is learned, but a lot of stuff is hardwired by DNA too. Okay? So that's your instructions for pretty much who you are, what you look like, and then your environment and what's around you. The nurture is what helps shape you into who you are. Right? If you were spoiled rotten your whole life and you got everything you ever wanted and nobody ever said no to you, guess what? You're going to be a jackass. Right? Students marching, I need this from you. Oh, don't tell me what you need from me. Right? I'm not coming into work that day. Well, then you're fired. Right? So there's a lot of environment on what shapes how people are and their personalities. But if you're a nervous type, if you're high strung, that's who you are unless you take medication. Right? I mean, lots of yoga might help, but there's a lot of hardwire. Yeah, and so that's a great question. That's a great comment. It doesn't mean you can't change. It doesn't mean you can't learn how to deal with what you've got. Now remember, I'm a geneticist, so that's my total bias. So I know some people might be psych majors and they're like, she is so full of shit, I'm not going to listen to her at all. Okay, this stuff's not going to be on the exam, okay, about how much of your personality is DNA, and it's just, it helps you see, right, that so much stuff is hardwired from your DNA, right? Like your metabolism, yes, you can affect your metabolism. We'll talk about that when we get to diet and nutrition, right? If you, sitting next to the person right next to you, you decide we're going to eat exactly the same foods, we're going to exercise exactly the same way and sleep exactly the same amount, it's likely the two of you will lose or gain a completely different amount of weight. Okay? And so, yeah, that sucks if you're on the side of whichever way you didn't want to go, right? But you can affect your metabolism by the more you exercise, the higher your metabolism. The more muscle mass you have, the higher your metabolism. The younger you are, so as we age, unfortunately, right? But you can modify. But you can't start in the middle and become the person that can eat everything no matter what unless you just run, 20 miles a day. You just are constantly running. Yeah, you can eat all day if you never stop running. But there are people who can, you see them, they eat all day and they eat crap. And they're skinny and it's irritating. That's DNA, right? But if there's a famine, they're going to be the first ones to die, and then you can shout, in your face, right? So it doesn't mean you can't change, but it does help you realize who you are, right? Like, why do I get so nervous about something and this person is totally chill? And that it's who you are. You got to learn how to live in your own DNA, how to deal with your own, figure out how you learn. How people learn is completely different, right? Some people learn visually. This is the best thing to do for yourself if you want to do well in college, is figure out how you learn best. If you are a visual learner, you need to do things that capitalize on being visual. If you remember things best by pictures, that's how you need to study for stuff. If you remember things best by what words look like, that's how you need to study. If you're an audio learner, you need to listen to stuff to remember it. The best way to sort of figure it out is if somebody came up to you and listed 5 things, just told you 5 things you need to buy at the grocery store. You need these 5 things. Can you go to the grocery store and pick those 5 things? I can't. I probably wouldn't even remember one of them unless I repeated it over and over in my head the entire drive to the grocery store. Because I don't learn shit from listening. Okay? If you can, then you remember things that you hear probably best. And so then you're going to listen to lecture capture over and over and over. I'm sorry. Right? You're going to read aloud to yourself from a book, from the textbook, or have someone read the text to you. Because you remember things you hear. On the exam, you're going to conjure up my voice giving you the answer, or your friend reading to you, or you reading aloud. Not what the stupid screen looked like. If somebody can write you a list of 5 things on a piece of paper in words, show it to you, then take the list away and you go to the store and you can pick out 4 of the 5 of those, you are a visual learner. And that's what you need to do. You need to look at stuff and remember it that way. Sometimes it is words, right? Sometimes it's pictures. What if that doesn't work for you? Somebody drew a milk carton, an egg, a butter, and you look at those pictures and then you go to the store and you can remember all of those, then that's how you need to study. You need to draw pictures of everything. If we're talking about evolution happens in a population, trait changes over time, you draw a picture of a bunch of individuals, each with a mohawk, right? And then you have somehow to put a clock next to it. That's how you remember what evolution is. Right? If you remember it by hearing, you say it aloud 1,000 times. If you remember it by words, you memorize the stupid things. I remember things best in words in my own writing. I don't remember so well from type. Probably because, I'm old and we used to chisel our homework into stone. So that's how I remember things best. Yeah? If you learn by movement and shapes and objects, then you got to get Play-Doh, right? And build sculpture. You're probably more likely to do pictures well, too, and shapes. Or looking at animations of stuff, right? And either building your own type of animations, right? Or if it's just you need to move around and be active, you can't sit still while you're studying, then you study on the move, right? Or you make sure you don't sit for 2 hours and study. You need to study 15 minutes, run up and down the stairs once. Study for 15 minutes, run up and down, right? If you just can't sit and do that, right? You just got to figure out how it works best for you, right? And then guess what? You just do the experiments. I love experiments, right? Just figure it out. Do some little tests for yourself, and then don't waste your time doing stuff that doesn't help you, unless you're really bored with all the, writing it out 400 times. Okay, well then listen to lecture capture, right? But you want to capitalize on the way you learn the best. All right, sorry, I just kept going. I could just keep talking. I can't listen, but I can certainly talk. Okay, so the adaptation, right, is what the individual has. It's what you got in your DNA, okay? It's that trait that gives you the higher fitness or allows you to survive and reproduce better. The adaptation you were born with, okay? You can't acquire it over time. Human beings, again, we got to leave them out of this discussion because we can kind of acquire things over time because we can figure out what we need. We can put a big fur coat on, right? If you're an Arctic fox, you're born with whatever thickness of fur, however many follicles per inch you get is what you get. If it's not enough to keep you warm in a cold snap, you're dead, right? The Arctic fox, or if you're not good at building a nice den, right? You're an idiot. You're not a kinesthetic learner. You can't do shapes and you're just laying out in the snow. Oh, I don't know what to... You're dead. Okay, you're not going to pass on those traits of an inability to build a good den to offspring because you're dead. You can't pass on your genes. Okay, so the adaptation is the thing you're born with, right? What ends up happening is the ones that adapt you best to the environment end up in populations. A higher frequency in the stupid population because the shitty ones are dead. So at 100,000 million years later, most individuals in that population have that adaptation. Because if they didn't, they were dead. So this is just an example from the book, and it talks about the book's example talks about antibiotic resistance. And again, This is all about variation in a population of bacteria. So antibiotics work by generally inhibiting some part of the life cycle of a bacteria, right? A bacteria is a single-celled organism. It has a cell wall, kind of like a plant cell, which is like a thick, actually sugary type substance. Okay. If they can't build a nice cell wall, their guts pour out of their membranes, and they can't survive. So lots of antibiotics block the ability of bacteria to build a nice cell wall around themselves. So that's perfect because animal cells don't build cell walls. So the pathway of blocking building cell walls doesn't hurt us at all, right? We can take that antibiotic and our cells don't give a crap. We don't build cell walls. It doesn't hurt us. Antibiotics might make you puke or, feel yucky, but they're not going to kill you. They will kill bacteria. They block that pathway of building the cell wall. Okay? The pathway of building the cell wall, again, just like everything else that has variation, the enzymes that do that job, all the components involved in that, vary from bacteria to bacteria, right? Faster at building it, there's more of this type of carbohydrate or more of that or blah, blah, blah. It's a better scaffold. It's, built more cleanly. You take a bunch of antibiotics, most of the bacteria get blown out right away. The ones that are really shitty, not so good at building their cell wall to begin with, get killed first, right? And then day 2, you take more antibiotics, and then the next ones that are sensitive get wiped out. And so on and so on and so on, until if you've taken the 14 days of your antibiotic, all of them should be dead, right? That's what was tested. That kills every single one. But you felt better after day 7. Your throat's not hurting anymore. The antibiotics make you a little queasy. Right on the bottle it says, do not drink alcohol. It's Friday. What you do? You put that up in the cabinet and close the door. Okay? What you've left inside is a population of bacteria that can survive 7 days of antibiotics. Right? So they might not come back and give you strep throat again right then, but they're just hanging out, right? We have bacteria all over us all the time. Most of them don't hurt us. If you catch a cold and you're a little immunosuppressed, your immune system's working on something else, sometimes those bacteria can go, hey, it's all nice and mucousy and warm, I love that. And then they start growing, okay? So then the next time you get a strep throat, 7 days of antibiotics are not going to do anything to that population because they were the ones that had already survived 7 days of antibiotics. So after the 3rd day, you're dying. You go back to the doctor and say, this sucks, this doesn't work at all. And they give you a different antibiotic. And then you take that. If you don't finish that prescription, you've selected for antibiotic resistant to the first antibiotic and the second one. Right? And then you're kissing your girlfriend, blah, right? And now she's got an antibiotic-resistant strain to these 2 antibiotics. She tries that one, it doesn't work. She tries the next one, it doesn't work. She has to go to the 3rd one. Okay? So the bacteria did not gain a mutation or the ability. One individual didn't gain the ability to not be affected by that antibiotic. Right? The population went through natural selection. Right? The guys who died, who were really shitty at avoiding the antibiotic, died. The ones that were good kept surviving. Right? If you finish your antibiotic, it's supposed to be, all of them gone. Okay? So evolution happened to that population over time. Because bacteria's life cycle is like 20 minutes, as it turns out, right? They have offspring every 20 minutes, right? Evolution happens very quickly because it's all about generation time, right? If mice can have babies every 6 weeks, the evolution in a mouse is going to happen a lot faster than human beings who have babies every 20, takes 20 years, 15 years, whatever, okay? So bacteria every 20 minutes evolution can happen in your throat in a week. Okay? And it does. I mean, that's just what we see. That's just what happens. Okay? And it's all about just what's available in the population. The antibiotic didn't cause a mutation to cause them to be able to not be affected. Right? It's whatever DNA they had in that new environment. Okay? So the book goes and has a nice little example for that. So you should read it, as it turns out. Reading is good. And then these are, again, just the examples of, right, the better they are at surviving, those are the ones that are left, and then they have babies, and they told two friends. Yeah.
Is that similar to MRSA?
Yeah, so the MRSA, the methicillin-resistant Staph aureus, is an antibiotic-resistant strain of bacteria. It's a normal skin bacteria that we all have. Right? We get to our immune system, we'll talk about how your skin is a barrier against infection, and the only places bacteria can get in are in the orifice, right? Any holes in your skin or any cuts, right? Otherwise, right, if you don't have any cuts, you could smear bacteria all over your arm. Don't lick it, okay? It's not going to do anything to you, right? But if you slide into second base and you skin up your leg, right, you have bacteria on your skin, and then, man, those baseball fields are nasty. Right? Now you've cut, it's nice and gooey, and all that bacteria loves warm gooiness, and so then the bacteria can start to grow. And the specific antibiotic resistant is resistant to a bunch of antibiotics right now. We still have some that work on it, but the fear is, when will that evolve to be resistant to that next level? And can we keep finding antibiotics and keep ahead of the superbugs that keep the population evolves antibiotic resistance? Right? There's antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis out there. There's nothing out there. If you get that, you likely die. So if you're given antibiotics, take the whole thing. Okay. All right. Oh my God, I just keep talking and talking. So now we're going to talk about specifically some types of selection, some types of natural selection that happen out there. Under all the same stupid rules we've just been talking about, but if, let's say we have, our example in the book is the human birth weight, okay? Over however long they've been tracking, especially since the Industrial Revolution, in areas with adequate nutrition, right? The average birth weight for babies is around 7 pounds, 7.3 pounds, or something like that. That's the average birth weight of all babies born, which of course means there's some that are underweight, right? Preemie babies and just small babies. And then there's some ridiculously gigantic ones that are not a good idea to birth, as it turns out. And so they're saying over time, this birth weight is narrowing to the average because it's dangerous. We all know preemies, right? A 1-pound baby's chance of survival is way less than a 7-pound baby's, right? As it turns out, survival of 10-pound babies or more is almost as bad as, not super preemies, but the ones down 4 to 5 pounds. Too big, not good. Too small is not good for survival, right? So if giant babies die, they don't pass on their giant baby DNA, right? If little ones, they don't pass on, so the average remains in here, right? If they do survive, and that was something that was genetically there's all kinds of crazy shit that can happen while you have preemie in that, but, right, the average birth weight has stayed relatively stable, right? And they call that stabilizing selection because it selects to the average. If the bigger the baby, the better survival, right? This curve would go this way because more giant babies would be surviving, and then they'd have giant babies, and so forth and so on, right? Or if small were better, because as it turns out, getting out the big ones, not good, right? Then this would shift this way, but it's not. It stays right in the middle. Happy medium is best for healthy babies. Okay? So that's called stabilizing selection. Right? So you can think of any example where the average is best, has the highest fitness, the best ability to survive and reproduce would be called stabilizing selection. Right? So on the quiz, it's unlikely I'll use the baby example. Right? But I will give you an example of the same thing. The short ones, get eaten by the grasshoppers. The tall ones get eaten by the cow. Only the medium-sized plants survive. Over time, the whole field is now medium-sized plants. What is going on here? And then you would go to your multiple choice and go, stabilizing selection. Okay? So for this class, it's not going to be just definition-driven. You have to know the definitions and apply it to a new situation. Sometimes it'll be the same stupid situation, and I can't think up anything else. Or I got tired, and I had to go to bed. All right. But it's not going to be, what is the definition of stabilizing selection? A few here and there will be, and the quizzes are more likely to be the simple definitions. Because if you don't know the definitions, you're totally screwed on the exam. Okay? Because the word stabilizing selection might be part of the question. If you don't know the definition of that, you don't even know what I'm asking. How the hell can you pick the right answer? Now you're at a 1 in 4 chance of getting it correct. Okay? If you guess on every single question, 1 in 4 is 25%. What's a 25%? F. Don't do that experiment. Okay? Please, please, please do not do that. Every semester, people do that goddamn experiment. You have to study. All the time. Brains remember things. Repetition, repetition, repetition. People. Okay. So selecting for the average is stabilizing. That's just its stupid term. The opposite, when it goes all to one direction, guess what? It's called directional. So that one's pretty easy, right? Direction goes all in one direction. Selects for all the tall stuff, right? The small, the short, and the medium get devoured by whatever rodent, right? But the tall ones, the rodent can't get up there, and the stems are thick, so the whole field ends up being tall plants. That would be directional selection. Okay. Their example is the antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria. If you keep throwing antibiotics in a thing, the only ones that are going to survive are the ones that are resistant. Because guess what? Otherwise, you're dead. Okay. So any extreme phenotype, phenotype being what the physical appearance or its characteristic. Okay. All short, all tall, all dark pink. There's no medium pink. There's no light pink. It's all dark. Right. The population started out with lots of variation. 100 years later, they're all dark pink. Directional selection. Aha. And then selecting for both extremes and not the average is diversifying. And so you can think of the word diversity meaning very different. Okay? The exact opposite of stabilizing, right? Stabilizing, everybody's going to the middle or to the average. This would be the extremes. Their example is a beak of these birds. If you have a really large beak, you can get the really big, heavy seeds. If you have a really small beak, you can fit and get the little tiny ones in the little cracks. If you have a medium beak, you suck at the big seeds and the small seeds. Okay? If you stink at getting all the food available, what happens to you? Dead. Okay, so that's diversifying. Oh, it's little top hat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to. Oh, and we have just enough time. Yay! Aw, you're so excited. Oh, you guys are the best thing ever. All right, remember, these are free points. Okay, so our question is, in case you can't read it, shall we? Yep, we have our code up there. When one population begins as intermediate-sized organisms, and over time the population becomes both small and large, but no intermediate, this is called what? Right? So not the middle. Both sides of the extreme. We started everybody with there's all things, and then 100 years later, there's no more middle of the road. La, 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 la. Does anybody have any questions while we're texting away? Yes. So the question is, will these guys be available to go back to look at? I don't think so. Your quiz, the online quiz questions, they are available to go back and look at after the quiz closes. So if you take your quiz on Sunday, it'll just give you your score, and you won't be able to see what the answers are until after Monday at midnight. So then Tuesday you could go look and see what you got wrong or right, and sometimes they tell you why, sometimes they don't. This one, I don't think so. All right, so is everybody texted? Are we in? Fire away, yes. What? Who? 6461. Sorry. Yeah, see what, let's see, I'll do, oh, that made it better. Is that better? Last time, remember, it went like off the screen on me? It's all working so much nicer today. Okay, so if we want to show our answer, yay! Yay! You guys are the best things ever! See? It's not really disabled. So if you want to change your answer, go ahead. All right, guys, see you Thursday. They're still changing. And I still didn't get through that lecture.
When you text in the answer.
You can't change?
Yeah.
Oh, you can? No, you can't. Oh, so the smart people have, I mean, they're at selective advantage. Yes.
I tried like before on Monday.
Uh-huh.
I tried. I'm a new freshman student.
Okay.
And I'm new to Moodle.
Okay.
So I tried to take the quiz.
And you.
It didn't work for me. Like it's not working for.
So you should. Fine.
I did it before
And it didn't work. Do you have a computer, or you need to go to a computer?
No, I have Mac. I use Mac. And
Okay.
I use my friend.
So I know that Moodle itself does not like Chrome, the browser Chrome, or Safari.
Yeah, I have Firefox.
Okay, Firefox is supposed to be its favorite. So you're supposed to just have to click this, and it's already gone. But do the attempt. And it didn't load.
No.
Um.
Doesn't work for me. I tried like.
So
all the times.
okay, so yeah, you get. So okay, so this So Thursday or whenever it opens, try to do it maybe Thursday or Friday, like Thursday night or Friday. And if it doesn't load, I can go in and I think I can delete your attempt. And then you can go to the IT